getting with me on this. It's going to be a fun half hour or so.
All right, let's let it happen here.
Okay, so let's start with all the beginning stuff. Where were you born and all that stuff? Are you native New Yorker?
I was born in
Go ahead.
okay, I was born in New York City.
Yeah. Grade school?
Grade school, junior high, and high school.
When did you start playing basketball?
I actually started playing basketball really seriously in the 8th grade.
And when did you know you were good?
Well, let me tell you something. It's a long story. I was the guy on the block that whenever there were games, they called Joe, John, Jim, and then say, yeah, and Nevil. Oh, my nickname was Butch.
Butch?
And Butch.
Yeah.
So, I either get a chance to play or I was on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
But, I was one of these guys that, hey, I wanted to become a basketball player.
Yeah.
And in the park was my gymnasium. It was Katona Park. And I used to get out there playing a lot by myself. And, one time this guy walked by and he saw me out here going through these uncontrollable motions. And he asked me, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to play basketball and the guys won't let me play with them. He says, how's your grade? And I said, that famous word, I can't even spell I, but that's why I said it anyway. So he said, hey, you better get some good grades, fella, because what if something happens to you? You better have something to fall back on. Yeah. And of course, it went in one ear and out the other. So this guy began helping me to play, starting from the fundamentals. And I had to buy into what this guy was, teaching me.
Yeah.
And I found out I was a heck of a rebounder, jumper, and I love blocking shots, and I can run like a gazelle. So that helped me a lot. But, really getting the basics, it came from him. This guy who was teaching me, who happened to walk past this park, his name was John Isaac. John Isaac was an Afro-American that played on the first Negro professional basketball team, the Harlem Renaissance.
Wow.
And later on, I found out that this guy's, he's a Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Now, I worked with him. And, in New York City, in the 9th grade, you're still in junior high school. So, I started blocking shots and running, couldn't shoot. I couldn't hit a bull on the butt with a bass fiddle, but they know I can block shots and run well. So guys started picking me up, and it kind of changed around when they saw me out on the park. They said, "Hey man, here come Butch," and it motivated me to try to take my game to another level.
Yeah.
So people heard about me in the Bronx, and the school, which was about like maybe a mile and a half away, was Mars High School. And that was the high school of my choice because it was in walking distance, even though other schools heard about me, but I wanted to stay close, in the neighborhood. The 10th grade, I made the team. Along came another guy in my life who was a park department guy. His name was Hilton White. And Hilton White, he heard about me through some other players that were playing for him. And he really got me into the game. How to make layups, a hook shot, defense, which was my specialty. And my game began, excelling to a point that I was competitive with other players. I started as a freshman.
Wow.
I started as a sophomore. In the sophomore year, I began getting recognition all over the city, playing in some of the better tournaments. Have you ever heard of the Rucker tournament?
Oh yeah, Rucker Park, you bet.
Well, I'm a Rucker product. And every year, basketball is year round in New York City.
Yeah, Cager claims that's his park.
Excuse me?
Cager claims that that's his park.
Well, Cager said that Cager, Cajun, and a lot of us could utilize that same reputation of that is his part. He played, Cajun did not play in high school.
Really?
That's a different story that I can, get into later on. But, when I was in my senior year in high school, I was an all-city player. I was rated, pretty high in the public school athletic league. And I got scholarships, but to schools that were not allowing Afro-Americans to attend the school. Nevil Shed does not sound like your typical African, Afro-American name. So the first school I was fortunate enough to attend was North Carolina A&T in Greensboro. Now, that was really a culture shock to me because in New York City, you're allowed to, do anything that you choose as far as being part of a neighborhood, riding the bus, going to the movies, restaurants, and all of those things that you can consider yourself being free. But when I got off that train in Greensboro and found out that I saw a colored bathroom and a colored water fountain and a colored restaurant, and I guess the picture was white and colored water fountains. Knowing that if I would have used that white water fountain or restroom, my life might have been in danger.
Oh, really?
Riding a bus. In New York City, you ride the bus any place you choose. And back then, the transportation was Afro-Americans had to ride the back of the bus. Restaurants. Now get a load of those restaurants that was owned by Afro-Americans. The chefs were Afro-American. The waiters were Afro-American. But yet, in order for me to go into that restaurant, I had to go around the back and up the stairs. And to everybody, that was common. I had fulfilled the dream of saying that, hey, I'm going to college, and mama, when I grow up, I want to become successful so I can give back to what you have been doing for me all these years. And
Yeah.
she was constantly saying, that will happen, but you better get a good education. What if you get hurt? You better have something to fall back on. But so with that in mind, and I'm now in college, I didn't have to go downtown to the restaurants. I didn't have to ride a bus. I stayed pretty much on campus, except for one time when I chose to go to a movie. Now, excuse me 1 second. One of my fans. I chose to go to the movies. Now get a load of this. I went downtown and I took my, my money and I put it into the, to pay for my ticket. The lady pushed my dollar right back out. And I said, ma'am, I'd like to go to the movie, please. She pointed around to the left or to the corner of the theater. And I said, ma'am, can I please go to the movies? So I remember it's so clear. This black couple came by and said, hey, ma'am, we got to go around to the side. So I said, it's all right with me. So I decided to go around. Oh, I got my dollar back, of course. And I went around to the side. And I remember this pink and green sign that said colored people's interests. Now, it struck me kind of funny. And I felt somewhat uncomfortable, wondering, why am I going to the movie going through the alley? So but anyway, I went up these stairs. I sat in the balcony. There were benches. It was filthy. It was filthy, all over the floor. And yes, I stayed to watch the movie, but that was the first and last time that I chose to go to the movies in Greensboro. Walking down the street, I saw this white refrigerated water fountain and a little bowl that was, the colored water fountain. And it had the big signs, colored water fountain. I remember one time that I was downtown for something, and Doug, right?
Yes.
I remember this little old lady walking down on the sidewalk, and she had a little basket, and in the basket was some Ajax. That's that, that cleanser.
Yeah.
And she was going around, cleaning out the water fountain. And I remember these two white guys walked past, and she stopped and kind of turned around for a minute, and they just spit right into the water fountain. And she waited. They walked on by. She took the Ajax and washed it out again and walked down the street. I could have said something, but I knew where I was, and that negative energy could have caused me a lot of trouble and maybe my life. And the networking we had about when it came and about segregation, today we got YouTube, WayTube, and everywhere of really counting about history all over the world with our media. The only two things that I remember to really give us an impact as to what was going on was two magazines. It was the Jet magazine and the Ebony magazine. And in that it told about, famous people, athletes, and other things that were going on, in the country. But see, that was in the magazine, not thinking about, I would ever have to encounter that because I was in New York, but hey, I was free. I could go and, do the things that we felt people should do, in America. But, that kind of shook me up. But hey, I was in school. I was going to college. The first step of my dream. Mom, I'm in school now. I have a chance that when I get out of here, if it's God's will, I'm going to become a professional basketball player. She always said to me, continue saying that, baby, that'll happen, but you better get a good education. What if you got hurt? You better have something to fall back on. The thing that my parents taught me a long time ago is that in growing up, you have to be man enough or intelligent enough to make your choices. You have to either, the choices that you really believe in, you'll stand by those things. I found out that, hey, this was not the place for me. And I called my mom up and said, Mama, I want to come back to New York. She said, baby, if you come back to New York, two things are going to happen. Either you're going to get yourself a job or you're going to try to go back to school. Well, there weren't any schools at that time for me, to pursue. So I started working in a hot dog store, all right, flipping burgers and hot dogs. That was something that I would not and did not want to happen in my life. While that was going on, of course, I continued to work on my tool of playing basketball, playing in the Rucker, and working with this man very closely, a gentleman by the name of Hilton White, who really was the father, my second father, because I was blessed to have a mother and father in my life. So I remember one day, this man came by my house. He was from El Paso, Texas, and he had an appointment at one of the banks, and he found out where I lived because a young man who lived in the Bronx told Coach Haskins about these athletes in the Bronx that he grew up with. So this man came by my house and right away offered me a full 4-year scholarship, room, board, tuition, and all fees paid. And
that was Coach Haskins?
Huh?
That was
Coach Haskins. It was the banker.
Oh.
I didn't even know who Coach Haskins was. And he was giving me this scholarship. And I said, Mama, I'm going to college. So along with me was Willie Cager. Now, Willie Cager did not graduate from high school. All right, but yet he was offered the opportunity to come to El Paso, and they worked out something from him, which I will explain a little later on in our, speaking engagement here. So my first flight, Willie Cage's first flight, and Texas. At that time, the only thing I thought about Texas was all wells and cows, But let me tell you, when that plane flew over the Franklin Mountain, and I looked out the window, and all I saw was mountain and desert, I said, Willie, hey man, I don't know if this is the right place for us. But that passed because I was going to college. That was my second chance in life.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Plane landed out on that field. Remember, it wasn't bays like they have now. It landed out on the field. And when he opened that door, that 100 and God knows how hot it was, and the dust and everything hit us right there. And I looked at Willie and I said, Willie, are we in the right place here? But yet, we didn't we didn't think much about it because we wanted to get the heck into some place where all this dust was not blowing. But all of a sudden, out of the dust, it was like a Clint Eastwood movie. Came Coach Haskins, this little fat dude here, that at the time, later on I can tell you how much I hated that SOB. That's strictly off the record. But anyway, he came out and introduced himself and spoke, talking, was happy to have us down there. And he drove us to a miners hall where we had the opportunity to meet, some of the other players at that time. Nolan Richardson he was coaching at Bowie, but yet he was there to introduce us to the Don Haskins regime. And later on, Haskins said, let me take you over to the gym. So I said, yeah, that's good. Me and Cage, I put my little Chuck Taylors on, and we went over to the gym, and that's where my life began, in the life of Don Haskins and the Texas Western team. We thought we were having a showcase there. Ended up in that doggone gym about 2 hours. Or I thought it was long. I thought we stayed there as long as he was not tired. And life began. The exciting episode of my life. But looking back then, I think I came to Coach Haskins as a young 19-year-old, kid just wanting to have a chance to play basketball and get a college education. When I left there, I left there as a man with so much opportunities that were given to me that I never in my life thought it would happen. Winning a national championship, but first the challenge was, who is Texas Western, or TWC? Is that Texas Women's College? Teeny Weeny College? Where's that school at? El Paso, never heard of it. There's that Cowboys and Steers there, but yet, we had to, I had to show my colors, but yet, no one knew nor cared about that university at that time, which now, it is well known for his academic, athletics, and of course, being at that time the only school in the state of Texas to ever win a national championship. Later on in my life, we won the championship, of course, in '66, March 19th. My senior year, I was drafted number 4 by the Boston Celtics. And, at that time, I was so excited. I told my mom, I said, Mama, I made it, Mama. This is my chance to give back. I made the pros. I'm on my way. And played with the great Bill Russell and the Havliceks and the Sam Jones, all the great, of course, champion, the real Boston Celtics during that time. It was Bill Russell's first year as coach and player. But midway through the beginning of the season, I was going for a layup shot in practice. And my whole life went down the drain. I went up for a layup shot. My knee slipped out, and I no longer was able to play the game of basketball. And you want to talk about somebody who was just down. You know, the first person I called was my favorite fan, my mom. And I started telling her, I said, Mama, I got hurt. Mama, they told me I can't play basketball anymore. Mama, you told me that, you know, dreams do come true. Mama, you told me, you know, if you have faith in something, Mama, you got to go for it. I said, Mama, I worked hard. I went through a lot of hell to get through this here. But Mama, I made it. And she said, Nevil, what do you have? I said, Mama, what do you mean, what do I have? I said, Mama, I can't play basketball anymore. She says, Nevil Shed, what do you have? She said, what do you have? I had to pause. And you know, the worst thing in the world is when you got to admit when your parents are right. Yeah. And I said, I got a college education. She said, what? I have a college education. She says, well, you no longer can play. And then she threw the big boom on me. God had other plans for you. You know, when that came out, because I came from a very strong Christian family, you know, I knew that my arms were too short to box with God, you know? So I said, well, there are other plans out here for me. So she said, baby, if you can't play anymore, why don't you teach? Why don't you start giving back to others what you were blessed with, you know, in your journey? You know, I'm a motivational speaker, and I title my speeches, Nevil Shed's Road to Glory. And I really added up by saying, from the eyes of the shadow, which is my nickname. And
when did you get that nickname?
Eddie Mullins, he was a sports information director at that time. And he gave all the guys, you know, nicknames. Harry Flournoy was the cricket. Bobby Joe was BJ. Austin Arnold was the big Lil O. Cager, he was Scoots. You know, Willie Worsley was Ironhead. You know, and Latin was Big Daddy Latin. So first he gave me the name Nevil the Tool Shed. And I said, hold on, wait a minute, man. Time out. Don't call me. That didn't sound appropriate for me. So as you all know, as well people know, that I was Coach Haskins, one of Coach Haskins' defensive specialists. And they used to say that, man, I stayed so close to the opponents that I seemed like I was their shadow. So that nickname came out, Nevil the Shadow Shed. And you know, people, of course, in El Paso, which I love you guys so much, and people who know basketball, they'll call me that here comes the shadow. And it's something that's been with me, you know, all of my tenure as a basketball player.
So how accurate was the movie?
I would say it was about 85% accurate.
Yeah.
The essence of that movie was 100%. You know, there were times, you know, like people who saw the movie, and I hope a lot of people who's watching this thing here better have seen the movie, because if you didn't, shame on you. Because I've seen it 1,253 times, and my grandson's gonna make me watch it tonight because I saw it on the 4th of July. Anyway, there were parts of the movie that did not happen. Every time somebody who's seen the movie say, did you really get beat up in the bathroom? I said, no. You know, how about you sleeping outside your dormitory room? No. But did you say hot doggo? I said, yes, I did. Well, why did you say that? I said, well, you know, coming from New York, you know, we didn't know about the Mexican cuisine. You know, I remember on Wednesdays, I think, was Mexican Food Day. I remember that first time, you know, the people serving the food could not speak English. So I said, man, what's this? Oh, frijole, taco, noodle. I said, whoa, slow down there. You said what? Tortillas. I said, wait, man. Hey, y'all got any hot dogs around here? He looked at me. nachos. I said, man, hot doggos. Anyway, somehow me complaining about the food got to Coach Haskins. So he said, if you do not like the food, we'll give you like a week of not eating in the cafeteria. Of course, you do know now that I love nachos, hot tamales, all that. As far as you even go further than that, I have been married to a Hispanic for 36 years. So I love my Mexican food along with the soul food now. You know, you got to have that. But that part was, it was ups and downs. The part in the movie where, our rooms were broken into.
Yeah.
Yes, that did happen. But there was not any blood on the walls. I think that was one of the most terrifying things to see that, you go into your hotel room and see, your clothes all torn up. And yes, of course, Coach Haskins got us out of there. Right?
Did that upset you the way they portrayed that?
It the hell out of me. Now, come on, you got to realize the time. You heard about it. You probably read about it. You listened to it on the radio, but never, to me, being in the midst of something like this here happening to us. I personally, and I think as well as not just the Afro-Americans, but all of us wanted to get out of that place. And Haskins, he did a great job of shielding us from those things. I know he had to go through a whole lot of hell throughout, his tenure of that team, when playing games.
Did he start his 5 best players?
Yes, he did. Now, at the beginning, he did not. He put a team out there that, was capable of winning games. And, it was kind of funny when we first got there. Hey, we were accustomed to run and gun. Hey, man, get the ball off the basket, off the rim and pass it out and take off down the floor. And all of a sudden, he had the guy slowing the ball up. And I said, man, what's going on here? Hey. And he said, in our offense, you have to slow the ball down. I think we had to pass it about maybe 15 times unless it was a layup shot. Could not put the ball behind your back, dare not go between your legs, and he even wouldn't allow us to make bounce passes.
Wow.
But that was part of the game, but we had to play Coach Haskins' game until later on he realized, and I don't know how he came up feeling that the 7 Afro-Americans were going to be the nucleus throughout the season, because I let people know all the time, yes, predominantly the 7 Afro-Americans, they got a lot of the props, but it took all 12 of those guys to get us there. Yeah. That was Haskins' way. But later on, he realized, I believe, that we were a fast team. We played super defense, and he put the right people out there who he thought could get the job done. Throughout the season, the starters primarily was Bobby Joe, Austin Artis, Harry Flournoy, David Lattin, and myself.
It's a pretty good front end.
Not bad. And I think 3 of us were left-handed, so that made it even more complicated. But now the championship game, he didn't start me. People asked me, "Come on, Shed, were you upset because you didn't start?" I said, "No," because I knew somewhere along the way I would get my chance, to play. And that was, I think, was a shock to Mr. Rupp to see that, he had those 3, super guards.
Yeah.
And Haskins always knew how to monitor and adjust to any situation.
Have you ever run into Pat Riley since then?
Not recently, but several years ago, I worked for the Spurs. I'm the camp director there for 36 years.
Yeah.
And I get seats down on the floor. And when he was coaching, or he might be sitting in the stands, and I'll walk past and he kind of said, "Shh, I know you're Nevil Shed, aren't you?" And I said, "You know me, hey, I was glad to shake his hand, you know." He'll admit sometimes, he said, "Man, you and Flournoy, man, gave me hell in that game," even though he scored 19 points, you know. But it wasn't good enough to come ahead of us in that game. And that game, I believe, was not our hardest game. But the thing that I liked about the game is that it was a game of character. And I think Coach Haskins and Mr. Rupp, he commanded that, you know. He wouldn't have had it no other way. And believe it or not, I can't remember any of the players playing with the negative statements of, playing against those niggas, or we saying the white boys here, we played a game. That was for a championship. But we went to that game that Bobby Joe used to say, "Hey man, hey baby, it's just another game in the park." That's how confident we were in going in the game. Hey, they shot 33%, and I think half the team fouled out. I think the best part of that game, when Coach Haskins, yes, did say to David Lattin, "The first time you get your hands on the ball, I don't care if you travel, I want you to slam that ball." His words, "flush it," he used to say. And as you all know, all around the world, how they say, the thunder was heard and seen. Unfortunately, Pat Riley was the product of being underneath him, because he broke it down. And I wish I could have seen the faces of all the players. To me, we laugh about it. I think that arena got a little quiet and knew that we were there, with a serious mission of winning a national championship. And to look at it now, and 56 years ago, and I say 56 years ago because yes, Baylor won it a year ago, and it took them 55 years before somebody could win a championship. And when they won that championship, my phone, my emails were jumping. "What do you think, Shed? What do you think, Shed?" Well, finally somebody from Texas, Baylor, won the championship. I said, "Stop." I said, "Stop. I think the great state of Texas is entitled to having another team win the national championship." And to me personally, I'm glad that I was still alive, to witness that. But let me tell you one thing: no matter who else wins that thing, Texas Western will always be number one.
Yeah.
And the history behind and how we accomplished that task, you can't beat that.
Yeah. So BB King was a friend of mine, and he would get out on his bus and he would call me, and he called me Beans. And he would say, "Tell me what the deal is with that basketball team from your hometown." And I'd say, "Well, Mr. King, it's the first time 5 African Americans started a NCAA game." And he would laugh and he'd say, "It sure as hell has happened a lot of times since then."
Yeah. I tell you, you got that right. And the part of the movie, right on BB, baby. Part of the movie I used to laugh about when I think it was Ross Moore said, "Now, can you just imagine, 5, I forgot how he said, but Negroes would actually capitalize the game of basketball? That's just not, you can't believe that." And we were always slapping 5 and say, "Yeah, Jabbar and, Tiny Archibald and other guys now who are the superstars in the game of basketball." Ross, I wish you were alive to see that, that come true, which he was, at the end of his great life.
So you go from all that, and you're talking about how, you want to get a college education, all that stuff. How did Nevil Shed end up at the White House?
At the White House. Well, I sit down and You know, I wish I could. You can see just a brief. I have a desk behind me with all the pictures of the white. You know, being with the president and all that kind of stuff. To have a chance to visit the White House, to meet the most powerful man in the world, you know, that just doesn't happen to anyone. And
Right.
when we went to shake his hand, I looked around at Cajun and I said, you wanna know something, Cajun? This should have happened about 50 years ago because the president of the United States was from Texas.
That's correct.
I said, he was from Texas. And we didn't even, we didn't even get a postcard from this man here.
Yeah.
You know, and I said the two things I wanted to do in my lifetime during then was one, visit the White House, and two, I think the national championship team would be on the Ed Sullivan show. I know he used to have that, and I was saying, Willie, we go on the New York the Ed Sullivan show, which never happened. You know, but that, you know, that passed. But, you know, to be with the, you know, the younger Bush and, you know, just to be there at the White House, you know, and it wasn't, we were trying to represent, you know, Black Lives Matter or anything like that. It was just something showing that if you had to describe that team in one word, I would say cohesiveness. Cohesiveness. Because that's what that team was all about. Yesterday and until this day, the ones that are still living, unfortunately, the ones that God decided to take home. If we were together right now, we're like a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
You know, laughing about, hey, you don't have any hair on your head now. And I say, no, you taking that pill? I use the same pill there. Yeah. Boy, this back is hurting here. Kids, man, I could not believe that kids was nothing on our recipe label at that time. But that was part of growing up. But another part of just you know, playing basketball, but we also had a successful life after athletics. All 12 of those guys, they called us all types of names, misfits, couldn't spell our own names, couldn't work under pressure, came from the prisons and everything. And when we can look back at that and say, oh, how much of a lie that you have been saying, because each one of those guys went on after athletics and became very successful business people, teachers, musicians, coaches, all of those things. You know, and I remember there was a lady in El Paso that did a report on the athletes from Kentucky and the ones from Texas Western. I think she said they were pretty much even, and the success that they had in the graduations and the things that they went out and done after basketball. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
When you talk about B&B, books and basketball, you got to talk about that when you're saying that all 12, your whole team went out and represented, you know, their families, you know, the university, and did the things that college education is all about. For us, we were fortunate enough to be able to play basketball, but the bottom line of when it was over with, you know, it really wasn't over with because we can always fall back and say, hey, I had two things going for me. I played my game of basketball at that time, the highest level. And when I graduated, and I'm living a very comfortable, you know, life. Yes, life is hard. You know, everybody, you know, always have those sometimes setbacks before you get the set ups. You know, but we can look back and say, you know, no one can talk bad about that team.
Yeah. How many kids do you have in your camp?
Oh, good Lord. We had a camp last week. We had 200 kids. I've been the director of the Spurs camp for 36 years, three generations.
Do all the kids get a basketball?
No, we used to do that, but they get so much. They get real nice jerseys, and so, you know, me being the director, they get an autograph picture of mine. I'm so glad that Nevil Shed is 9 letters, because I tell you what, your hand gets awful tired of doing it. But they get a lot of stuff. But the main thing of it is, it's not a recreation camp.
Right.
We exercise not just being a team, a very highly prestigious team, but all the parts of basketball and off the court. We talk about character and how you represent yourself, respect, which sometimes, you don't hear, people when they're selling their product talk about. We have values that we talk about, how if you have a dream, of if there's something that you have in your life that's over in basketball, how do you do that stuff off the court, correction? And we talk about that. And then we also talk about, one part we talk about character. We use that as Tim Duncan. We have hustle. That'll be Manu, Ginobili. They have one about, courage. And they have a little history part about me in there. Just let them know the values, because, it's just not basketball. And this is something that our kids, they got to realize.
Does Pop have any, does Coach Pop have any Haskins in him?
Yes. Yes, he does. Let me tell you something. If you ever seen him really get on his players, but sometimes I used to have the privilege of being, in some of his practice, or watch his practice, and to hear him get on Tim Duncan and the Parkers and the kids that he have now, and then never fuss back at him. And he can say some things, and they'll just look at him, But being a basketball player, for any coach, if it's something that you want to do, you have to buy into the person that's coaching you. You have to buy, you can hate him and everything, but if you don't walk away from him, you have to realize there's something that this guy has, that he's teaching me that's going to take my game to another level, or to say for us to keep on winning.
So, Neville, after 66, then UCLA happened, huh?
Yes. And,
I mean, how incredible is that?
Let me tell you something. They were winning. We broke. Matter of fact, I think we broke their.
You did.
And they're winning those games, and they have, and still do have, very prestigious athletes. But you can't compare what Texas Western have versus UCLA. Remember that was a team of colors. All right, they were academics. That's how. Matter of fact, Jabbar, he lived about 2 miles from me in New York City. He did not get an athlete scholarship. He went to school on an academic scholarship. They did not go through the things that we had to go through. After the national championship, Coach Haskins used to talk about getting barrels, garbage cans of hate mail. As a matter of fact, when we went back to New York, sometimes I wish I didn't win the darn thing. I was called, sometimes they call us Uncle Toms, white man, slave, rather than saying, man, these guys for 1 year won a national champion. Jealous. They were jealous. I remember sometimes going to the parks to play against some of the better basketball players. It was like wired up going against, some bad guy. Oh, you're a national championship, bring it on. But then again, we brought it on, because we represented ourselves away from Texas Western, because that's how we were that's how we were properly prepared for the game of basketball. I didn't have to brag about that. When the game was over, yes, we had the rings and everything. I didn't walk around and say, nah, I'm a national championship. You all thought we couldn't win this thing. You didn't have to do that, because we were 12 athletes of character. That's what it's all about. You don't have, when you win something like that, which, remember now, it was years later before we got rings. You know, it was years later before it really came out.
How much did Joe have to do with all that, Gomez?
So he was a student. He was a student there. You know, he stuck. You know, he was like a man behind the scene. You know, we represented and liked him an awful lot. You know, and he kept it with him. He did some things that people never thought could be done during that time. And he still is that #1 fan of not just that basketball team, but he represents, you know, UTEP in a high standard.
He does.
Yeah, that's what's good about old Joe, you know.
So what else?
Well, you know, besides that, you know, when I stopped playing the game, you know, yes, I tore cartilage. I think I've had every doggone injury that could ever happen to an athlete, when I never thought could happen to an athlete. You know, the cartilage, I tore cartilage, which really, you know, stopped me from really playing at that level. ACL, 2 knee replacements, Achilles, you know, 2 rotator cuff. Lord, the only thing I didn't have is an amputee. You know, I'm not that. But yet, you know, I think my message, what God had planned for me, is to keep myself in an environment where I can give back to others. You know, sometimes athletes and just people who graduate from college, if you're majoring in something, sometimes they'll kind of channel off because other opportunities were out there for them. My degree was kinesiology and health and recreation. And that's what I've been doing from the time, even before I got out of college, working in community centers, working with kids, you know, teaching kids how to take negative energies and turn them into positive actions. Sometimes really being a father when they don't have a father, being a counselor, you know, going through the pain, you know, and the happiness. You know, the greatest thing working with the Spurs, you know, just a camp we had last week, and not just athletes in the United States, but all over the country. I had 3 families walk up to me last week and said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "No." Well, I was in the camp 25 years ago. Now I have my children going to your camp, and they've been in there for 3 years. I said, "Good Lord." I said, and we keep on coming back because we remember the things that you said to them. I said, "Oh, by the way, did I have hair on my head?" They said, "No, you got a ball there." That's all right. And they tell me these things. Kids, little kids come up to me and, you know, they hug me. You know how it is when, you know, you're very cautious as to how you know, put your arms around a child. And I kind of look at them, and there's a Neville, you better hug the child. And you're the one that, you know, hey, those kids love, that's unconditional love.
Sure.
That's the thank you that I get from them. Of 3 generations now, you know, that's a great feeling. They said, "When are you gonna stop?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I guess when God says I can stop." They even, last November, I think it was, I was at a Spurs game, and they told me I had to go up to this balcony, and they gave me a Spurs jersey with 35 years on it.
Wow.
You know, and I'm, you know, I'm the guy on the team that used to be quiet, but I guess I'm the biggest mouth now. And I couldn't say nothing, you know. And people walk up to me. I can't sometimes enjoy the games, and my wife hates to be with me because I always got to stop and sign autographs. But I never stop signing those autographs, you know. And to have people walk up to me and say, "Do you know who this is?" I also have to compete with George Gervin because we look so much alike. And they said, "Can I have a picture of you?" And I said, "Yes." We really appreciate how you represented San Antonio. I said, "Do you know who I am?" "You're the Iceman." I said, "No, I'm Nevil Shed." And then they'll look, you know, God bless old Google and everything. I said, "You're that guy who on that national championship?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And, you know, "Did you play for the Celtics?" I said, "For a little while." You got your picture on a Wheaties box?" I said, "Yep." And I said, you know, at that time, I said, you know, they have 2 Hall of Famers in San Antonio. George Gervin's is #1. Nevil Shed is #2. #3 is David Robinson. #4 is Tim Duncan. And this next year, it'll be Ginobili.
What do you think about today's game?
Huh? Let me tell you something. I'd rather, honestly, I bet, look now, I'm an NBA fan here, but the NBA have, to a certain extent, took this beautiful game with the tremendous God-given talent that's being shown every day, but their characters are destroying us. Not just monetarily, but academically. Academic, where's the respect? I have an ABA team, which will be coming to El Paso later on in the year, called the Texas Red Wolves. And one thing I have, we're having tryouts now, and they walk around, give me all that stuff, that blabbing. I said, cut it out. I said, you can't play for me like that. Hey man, you're not representing my team, and you're darn sure not representing yourself. The AAU is the greatest opportunity for athletes, all right, who have the dreams. But it starts not just from being on the court, it starts in the house. It starts from the coaches, and then comes the players. They be cursing and fighting, and the referees, and you look around and the parents are yelling at the kids, yelling at the referees, the coaches are jumping up, and the kids out there saying things that's taking away the beauty of this game. These basketball players of, having a dream, that's having a great dream of having the physical and the characteristics of being a great dream, but taking it by their character.
What do you think about high school to pro?
High school to pro? Nah, I don't like it. Now we hear about the great, great, great ones, but we don't hear about the ones that decide to take away that opportunity of having 4 or 6 years of college, education, and then go there and don't make the team.
Yeah.
You understand? Hey, when I was with the Celtics, there were some guys better than me, but I don't understand why I was able to stay there until I got hurt, and they had to go back home. We don't hear about the athletes that put everything on the line and go back, unless you have the characters how, well, at least I finished school, but a lot of them don't do that, but because they put so much emphasis on making that team. It's a money thing. Look at the stipends they get now. We were getting $10 a month, and that $10, even though gasoline was 10 cents or something to gallon, but they're getting thousands of dollars a month. They're no longer, athletes. They're not academic athletes. They are professional academic athletes.
I think it got off track when we quit sending the college kids to the Olympics.
Yep, that is true.
That
is true. Remember at the time it was college and army. They go in the military.
Yep. And
that one game that if you remember that Jim Forbes played in and coach
down
coaching when Russia so-called beat us, and I still fuss at people from that.
Would you take the silver medal if you were them?
No. I think I would have taken it if you look at it from the point and say, well, I'm we here represent the United States, but in my spirit, I don't think it was appropriately given to me. When now today that would have never happened because of the technology that we have.
Right.
That even though they proved that what had happened, it shouldn't have been that way. But you can't, because I went to the Olympics. You understand?
Yeah.
But what we did, okay, you want to play that game? I'm gonna put my best in the world out there. When they had the dream team. And at that time, I don't care who it was, except for Jesus' team, with all praise to God, that would have been the only, hey, there was nobody could beat them.
No.
You know, and that was maybe a little part, just a little tablespoon of sometimes the character that we lost in the game. You
Yeah.
know, but you know, our expectation, you know, I had two two kids that played basketball. And the worst thing for them, they said, boy, you know, what's your name? Brian Shed, what's your name? Nolan Shed? Boy, you know, you got that bloodline of the shadow. And it almost killed them, you know, because they, you know, one of them, you know, he was all district and everything, but he went to college. The other one chose to go into the armed forces, you know, representing, you know, the great, you know, the United States women putting his life on the line. I'll call him a Hall of Famer anytime there, you know, and praise be to God, they brought him back to be healthy, you know, but, you know, it's something that we got to control. You know, right now, you're singing a song, you know, you got a song out there that can go anywhere. And what we do, what our public have to do is catch on to the melody. You know, catch on to the melody. We got so much stuff out there. You know, one person's opinion, you know, is worth a whole lot of success or failure to anyone.
Sure.
You know, does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
Sure, I get it.
And you know, don't look at you. You know, I don't want them to look at this episode that you and I of Bing was saying that, oh, there's Nevil Shed representing the Texas Western. I want them to see how the opportunity today is out there for everybody. You know, I have speeches, and you know, I have a lot of people that throw out me, you know, what do you think about Black Lives Matter? I said, stop. I don't want to get into that. And I'm not going to let you and I get into that conversation because, you know, that ain't, you know, I can understand the suffering, you know, but I also understand the courage, how we have the freedom to stand up, you know, and represent anything. We put our lives on the line, on the line right now, just to say that I'm free. You know, free comes to everyone. That's God's plan. You know, hey, your blood and everything. You know, it's the same color. But we have such a long way still to go.
Yeah.
And yes, you know, what we did, we accomplished something. You understand? But it took a whole lot of people then. And hey, they still talk about that team. You know, I think that when that movie was being made, at one time, I think they just wanted to use the 7 Afro-Americans. Don't, you know, do research on that. But we said, no, can't be that way. Can't be that way. It was 12 people. You know, we are the men of Glory Road.
Yeah.
We are the men from the 7 Afro-Americans to Jerry Armstrong and Louis Bourdon and Togo Riley. And you know, all those guys, you know, that was a we team, not a me team. But they talk about the 7, the magnificent 7. No, the men, the 12 men of Glory Road. That's how it has to go. That's a legend. You say, man, you're a legend. I get scared when I say a legend. A legend, man. That's something that never dies. You know, a legend. You know, and I'm looking at 56 years now. You know. I always say, well, you can call me a legend, but I call myself blessed. I call myself every day when I can look over my shoulder and say that my children, if qualified, can go to any school of their choice. My children, if qualified, can stand up and voice their opinion. Even sometimes it may knock you down, but if you have the courage and the faith in God, then you can stand up and still pursue what you believe. It's because they've been they've been educated, and take the technology that we have today. You know, hey, we can be the most dangerous person in the world with that little telephone. You know, that little telephone is powerful. What you got now is powerful. You know, I had to wait for a telegram to find out if I was being drafted. You know, they asked us, did you know anything about Kentucky? I said, no. All I knew was that they had won the championship 4 years prior to that. You know, what about Adolph Rupp? Well, they tell me that he was a racist, but I don't know anything about him except he coached that team that won the national championship. But hey, they're gonna have a job on their hands tonight.
Yeah.
Well, they got, and which they did. And you know, a little unknown story. I know we might still have time. I'll tell this story here just for the heck of it.
All right.
There was the University of Cincinnati, which we had to play Kansas to go to the Final Four.
JoJo White's foot on the line, yes or no?
No, not even before that.
Okay.
We were playing Cincinnati. The starting five was Bobby Joe, Austin, Flournoy, Latin, and Nevil the Shed. It was this guy that was grabbing hold of my shirt and bumping me around. So we started nudging each other, and Haskins said, "Shad, you just cut that out." And I said, "But coach," he said, "play the game." So I said, "Okay, I'll fix that." About maybe 4 minutes into the first half, I had to go out to set a screen for Latin to come, cut to the basket. And this young man had a handful of my jersey. So I decided to give him a roundhouse. On national TV, in the chops, the referee said, of course, "Boop, I'm out of the game."
Really?
Yes, sir. See, nobody know about that. I can say it now. Coach Haskins said, "Oh, he called me, you're done. Just get out of here." So, they threw me out the game. That was Texas Tech, I think it was, when we played those games there. After the game, Willie Cagey shot a hook shot, I think it was, winning in overtime. When the game was over, Coach Haskins left me in the gym. He just left me in the gym. So I called my mom up, my favorite friend. I said, "Mom," she said, "Are you out of your mind? You did what?" And I said, "Oh Lord, I'm getting no help here." Just so happened that Eddie Mullins was coming out, or whatever he was coming out. He said, "Shadow, what you doing here?" I said, "Coach Haskins left me here." He said, "Get in the car." So he took me back to the hotel. Now we had to play Kansas the next night. And I think everybody was looking at the battle between Walt Wesley and Nevil Shed, the two big centers and what have you. Next moment for breakfast, I stayed in the background. I stayed away from them. Nobody said anything to me, or no one even talked about it. Pre-game meal came by. I had to sit there, and I sat in the back again rather than sitting with the fellas, and Haskins, talked about what we had to do, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, it's time to go to the game. So I got in the station wagon with the rest of the team. I said, well, I'm still hanging in there. Got to the locker room. I saw my uniform out and everything. I said, well, I guess things looking good for the moment here. So I put my uniform on. I stayed in the background, stayed away from Coach Haskins. So Mo used to write down, the plays, what have you. And then Haskins would, put the first five out there. So my name wasn't being called. So he said, all right, so-and-so, and so they put our hands together. So we line up, and I was always second to the last. But for some reason, I was at the end. So as we walking out on the basketball arena, when it got to me, Haskins said, "Shed!" And I said, I cannot believe he put me all through this to tell me that I cannot play. So I walked up to him and I said, "Sir," he said, "the next time you try to act like Cassius Clay, make sure he didn't get up off the floor." And he kind of laughed at me, and that was it. That was it, So, I said, well, that's a good note, So I did my little warm up and everything. So when he called out the first half, now we were going back and forth with JoJo White and the team, I think we were up about 2 or 3 points at halftime. I still haven't played. I tried to go sit at the end. He said, Shine, you get over here. So I shot over there right next to him, and I was whooping and howling like I should be, representing my team. 12 minutes into the game, he said, Shed, get in there for Latin. Doug, I jumped up off that bench. I had my jacket off and my sweatpants before I touched the ground. I went in that game and shot 12 points and 12 rebounds in the last 12 minutes of the game.
Yep.
And of course, I got my little bits and what have you, defense. And I remember that shot. When JoJo White was coming down on the left side of the court, Bobby Joe had him. And all of a sudden, I looked and I saw him shoot this jump shot. And I saw that ball. That ball looked like it was going so slow, I could have read the serial number on it. I tell you, and it went in. Boom. And we just fell apart. And that was Rudy Marriage. The referee had his hand up and he pointed down and said, no basket. Like Bobby Joe always said, it's just another game in the park.
There you go.
And that was it. And to this day, they still say that, his foot wasn't on the line, but I got pictures. And, as a motivational speaker that I decided to start doing after the movie, somebody said, my wife said, why don't you start, speaking? I said, I don't know. She said, go ahead on. Call it Nevil Shed's Road to Glory.
There you go.
Now check this out. I started off speaking at the schools that we won championship. I started off with the University of Kentucky. That was my first speaking engagement. I went to University of Kentucky. That's when Tubby Smith was there. And of course, I was getting all kinds of emails and stuff saying, don't you go down there and scrutinize us. I said, man, hey, I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm not gonna do that. They had me on the TV station they had for an hour, just talking about the game, blah, blah, blah. But I never said anything that would bring down Kentucky. I remember walking into Rupp's Arena and walking down the stairs, I began to cry. I don't know why. I began to cry and Tubby Smith, is something wrong? And I said, years ago, I couldn't have put my foot out on this floor here. And now I look at it, you just won a national championship, 5 African Americans. And before you, I forgot the coach's name, but he also won a national championship with 5 African Americans. I said, if you don't think progress is in our favor, just look at what you guys are doing.
There you go.
That was powerful to me. That is something when I talk about the growth of athletics. Not talking about society. We look at it saying that, what did Pat Riley say? It was the Emancipation, the Proclamation of Basketball. Somehow he said that,
Yeah.
It's the truth, I think we did open up the doors, to open the eyes of individuals saying that if just given a chance, man, that's all, just given a chance, because there were so many athletes that were qualified, to go to these great schools and just wasn't given a chance. Look at David Latin, man. He was All-American, had one of the biggest school right there, not too far from where he lived at, and he couldn't even go to his college, University of Houston. I could have gone to some of the schools, I think, in New York, but I wanted to get out of the city and everything, But I could have played at those places, as well as Willie Worsley. Cager went to, he went down to El Paso with me. Cager had to go to El Paso High School for a semester to graduate.
GED.
That's right. You understand?
Yep.
And Willie was the first one to graduate out of all the guys. You talking about a great man and Coach Haskins? You can't, give him a chance. You understand? That's great. He didn't think about just the basketball. Who would take a chance with a young man by the words of a coach that I got a guy who can play for you all? Willie never played high school basketball.
I didn't know that.
That's right. He never played high school basketball. you know, but he was on this one team with this guy, Hilton White. You know, not that he owned Rucker, but as you see, Scoops was he was a very talented athlete. You know, and I value him very highly because Cajun taught me how to drive a car, and you know, a lot of little special things. You know, it was really that, you know, he was like my big brother out there. You know, and you know, but for Coach Haskins to do that, that's how humble, you know, Coach Haskins was, and he told me that, you know, that in order, you know, when you get out, when you leave, you had to come back to school to finish school for anything. He said, you know, you come on back. He brought me back. He brought me back. We get 3 credits. I had to get 9 credits. You know, you should have been back here. His words here. I remember I came back later on, became one of the assistant basketball coaches. It was Tim Floyd, myself, and I remember I was talking to Stretch Elliott, you know, and some of the other guys there. You know, while they were, you know, they were just running, they were scrimmaging. You know, Haskins was way up there in the bleachers. And he said, y'all just cut that up. And I got so nervous, I jumped up and almost knocked Stretch out. I said, wait a minute. I'm one of the assistant coaches here. That man still had me. You know, he still had that little fire in me, you know, that I used to get nervous. I think I was his whooping dog. Oh, I can tell you some stories of some of the things that he did to the shadow. He made me run the bleachers one time in the old field house. And to this day, I don't know what I did. Anyway, I was running up and down this thing, up and down. Practice is going on. And Ross Moore said, he's called Coach Haddon Sonny. He said, Sonny, you know you got Shed up there on the bleachers there. You know, he might fall. He said, what the hell is he doing up there? He said, I don't know. I just keep him up there. He just kept me up there. I'm running down. And then finally he said, Shed, you just get down here. So I went down and I sat down on the bench. And I figured he'd let me rest. He said, you just get yourself out there. I would drag, and he had the old wool sweatsuits we used to have. It just be drenching. And when they were trying to write, you know, script for the movie, he spoke to every one of the athletes, you know, by themselves. And it was amazing that all of them were pretty much the same as to what he said. So they asked me, he said, did Coach Haskins ever say anything derogatory, you know, that racist, you know, kind of thing? And I said, no. And I said, but he was rough on you. I said, yeah. But did he ever curse at you? I said, no. Well, if you want to say, he said, to hell, a damn. But everything, he had a way of saying things, particularly to me. And he said, like what? I said, for some reason, he'd get on me sometimes and say, Shed, if your brains was dynamite, you just blow this doggone gym up. Or he said to me, you're just like a mother goose. You wake up in a new world every day. And I, you know, and he told me, don't you look at me like that. And I just kind of look over his head. And when he walks away, I'm, you know, trying to, you know. And I know one time, what was it? He said to me one time, just look at me. And I looked at him. He said, I know you just want to, I forgot you feel a little salty in here, you know, you just wanted to hit me. And I said, no, sir. You know, like that, you know. And he got, you know, just get on out there. You wild man, you. And, you know, you had to be you had to be a special type of ball player to play for this man. And I told him years as a coach, I said, why is it that you stayed on my ass all the time? He said, I know you can take it and you weren't going to quit. That's what he said. And he was right. You know, I was fortunate enough to, when he passed away, Steve Tredetti, who also played for Coach Haskins, him and I are very close. And we used to do a lot of traveling, you know, in the honor of Coach Haskins. We took a trip one time to all the schools that he coached at, and Dumas and all Headley and the places. We called it Ebony and Ivory Road to Glory. And we told him we were going to do this one time, you know, this when we were still living. And he said, you're going to go where? He said, I like that. And every time we drive somebody out, where you at? And we tell them where we at. Well, when you get to Headley, there's gonna be a courthouse there, and so he remembered all that stuff. And if you go down the street and so that little house, well, you know, Mary and I used to live, you know, and the house was still, it was just torn down and dilapidated. And I wanted to walk into the house, you know. And they said, "Shit, don't do that for what? There could be snakes in there." Oh, you should have seen my move. I was moving around and trying to get over that, you know. But there's stories about him, you know.
You bring up Headley. Do you remember? God dang it, my high school coach, Bobby Leslie.
Yes. Oh, you know, him and Haskins, that was a feud. Oh, them two was something else.
I mean, you know, Shed, we won the state in '76, and Bobby Leslie would not go into the Special Events Center, as it used to be called, and finally the Don Haskins Center. He had some running feud that was pretty strong. Bobby was a heck of a coach.
Yes, he was. You know, and a heck of a player. You know, he was one of Coach Haskins' warriors. The same thing about Tony. Like my mind is one of the 12 athletes that just doesn't, you know, never showed up any of the Hispanic guy on the team. In my mind is
Palacios.
Huh?
Palacios.
Harper. No, Palacio, David Palacio.
Yeah, David.
We never knew, you know, and I think he took that to his grave. He just never knew why, you know, he never, you know, participated in a lot of the things. But when we talk about our team, he's part of that Big 12, you know. We don't leave that out. That's him from the time we started all this prestigious stuff to, you know, whatever, you know, Palacio is one of the people there. It's a story, man, you know, and he, you know, that's the house that Haskins built.
Yeah.
You know, and I look at it, yes, we are blessed with football is starting to make a step, you know, back towards, you know, the old times. And I wish them all the luck in the world, and I represent them, you know, very high. But I remember when it came to football, when they had the winning team, you know, you could not get a seat in the gymnasium. I remember they had an auxiliary gym in the back where they'd show a big wide screen. Tickets were unbelievable. you know, it was so. I think that was the worst place in the world to play. You know, because of how people loved that team then. And today, the younger generation, like we had a lot of kids from El Paso that come to my Spurs camp. And the parents would say, this is so and so and so. And I said, "You know anything about me?" And they said, "No." "You ever seen the movie Glory Road?" "No." And I said, "What?" And sometimes the parents were a little embarrassed. Yeah, this is the shadow. And they said, that makes it even worse, you know. So then they began to talk. What is one of the most famous things you could talk about Texas, Western, or UTEP? Well, they had that team that won the championship there. I said, "Would you believe that I was the starter on that team?" And they looked, and I began to tell them. I said, "Google my name. I ain't telling you nothing else." And they Google, and you know what makes me feel so good? Just to see how their faces light up. You know, and they say, "Yeah, El Paso, that's right. You can talk about UCLA, but you can't talk about, you know, you really have something to represent. You know, you can put your university, your town up with the best teams, the best towns in the United States, because you're always gonna say being number one is something that, you know, too many of us don't have a chance to really talk about, and that's for life.
Yeah.
That's for life.
Well, Neville, thank you for doing this.
I hope I didn't bore you. You know.
Oh, not in the least. It was invigorating.
Yeah, but you know, El Paso. I just want to say that, you know, from the day that I put my foot on that sandy airport to this day, I cannot thank that town for what they did for me.
Yeah.
They gave me so much love, so much respect. I had no other choice but to put everything that God energized me with to represent my school, my town, the people, and the love that I have for El Paso, Texas. I love you, El Paso.
I'll tell everybody I see. Neville, thank you again.
All right.
Bye-bye.
We're down the road. We'll meet in person. This is not goodbye, but
Yeah, that'd be great. See you later.
All right.
Bye.
Peace out.